Papaw died on a Tuesday, the day after Haley left. Neither event came as a surprise. He was in better health than our relationship those last few years. She told me one last time that my job was more important to me than she was, and I stopped pretending to disagree. I didn't call to tell my father for fear the news would send him off on a bender or cause a relapse, and I didn't call to tell my mother because I hadn't told him. Aunt Laura called me the next morning to say that Papaw had passed in the night and Dad had gone to the liquor store. That day I wished I had a brother more than I had since I was 10. I went straight to Shelby and got Dad sober in time for the visitation Wednesday night. We kept the casket closed throughout, and as we waited for the mourners to come, I stood tracing the lines in the mahogany and wondering if my grandmother would have left him had she not died so young. Dad shifted into Reverend when the first person came through the door. It was as natural as breathing for him to pat hands as he shook them, to gently wipe tears away from the cheeks with his thumb, squeeze the shoulders of every person whose face fell upon his chest. A stranger could easily have thought he was the deceased's minister rather than his son. I saw that night that those who whispered when Mom left had been wrong. He had not been a drunk just pretending to be a preacher all those years. There were no lies, no hypocrisy. It was all true. He was a bad husband and a good pastor, both sinner and saint. He was all these things, and so am I. The next morning we found him in the closet. He was gripping the front of his shirt at the hem where the sleeves were sewn on and rocking back and forth. After an hour of struggle, my aunt and I got him dressed, but he never made a sound. 2 of my cousins carried him to the car and strapped him in, and he continued rocking in the passenger seat. I sat down behind the wheel, belted myself in, turned the key in the ignition. "Do you remember Ravon Suevas?" I said. "He had the fastest hands I've ever seen." I put the car in reverse and backed into Cordell Street without looking to see what might be coming. "I didn't think I'd get through those 3 rounds alive," I told him. I put the car in drive and headed east toward Maine. "Left hook," Dad said, still rocking and tugging at his suit jacket. "Says you. I was just trying to get out of the way and accidentally hit him in the process. Who knew he had a glass jaw?" "You don't know till you hit them," he said. He was nothing like Bill Collins. That boy was made of stone. He moved like it, too. I wore myself out punching that guy, but I couldn't knock him down. I swear my hands were in worse shape than his head after that fight. "Turn left," Dad said, and he was right. I parked the car and got out and walked into the church. He walked under his own power. When the time came, he stood up and delivered the eulogy like the polished speaker he had always been. "What day is it, Joe?" Dad asked. I have spent the night in a chair in my father's room, and it is his words which awaken me. I feel as though my chest has turned to ice and a chill radiates to the tips of my fingers, then recedes in a shiver. He remembers my name. "It's Sunday," I respond as soon as I am able to recall. My father ponders this response as he inspects the buttons and dials on the arms of his bed. When he has found the right one, he adjusts the angle of the bed to get a better view of me. In a concerned, conspiratorial whisper, he asks, "Shouldn't you be at church?" "I'm not a pastor anymore, Dad." The skin of his brow ripples and draws itself to a point just above the bridge of his nose. It is an external response to his internal disbelief. "What do you do now?" he asks, his voice shifting into the tone of an interrogating disciplinarian. "I teach physical education at the high school," I respond, feeling momentarily as though I am still a student there myself. This answer seems to satisfy him, and he relaxes once again into his bed. "Do you like it?" he asks, and authority has vanished from his words as quickly as it had appeared. "I don't mind it," I say. "It pays enough to live on, and it's as stable a job as you can hope for." He takes a passing interest in the remaining contents of his breakfast tray, a small plastic container of orange juice still sealed, and a bran muffin. How come? He asks. Because they have to have PE, I tell him. There's a law. He struggles to open the orange juice, fails, and abandons the container on the bed with a sigh. Eventually he turns to look at me and asks, "Why aren't you preaching anymore?" "Because Haley left me, Dad," I tell him. "I'm divorced, and Baptist preachers can't be divorced. You know that as well as I do." He turns his attention to the orange juice again, but he still can't make his fingers grasp the aluminum foil tab. They have become too slick from the condensation on the lower part of the container, and there is not enough friction to keep the silver cover from slipping away when he pulls. Defeated, he puts the orange juice back on the tray. "Do you miss it?" he asks. "Every day," I respond. "Me too, son," my dad replies. "Me too." Haley and I pulled into the driveway at the parsonage on Kern Street at 2:30 in the morning. She had spent the last 3 of our 14-hour journey from the seminary in Fort Worth sleeping in the back seat. I ignored her shoes and the luggage and carried her to the front door. Not even the porch light was on, but the house was unlocked. Nothing in the house where I grew up had ever been rearranged, so I could have found my way to the back bedroom blindfolded. The street light shining through the window showed me more than I needed to see. Sliding sideways down the hall, I could hear my mother snoring from my parents' room, the door left open so they could hear my grandfather if he called in the night. "Welcome home, Joe," came my father's voice, not really awake. I knew he wouldn't remember in the morning. At the end of the hall, I turned the corner into my old room and put Haley gently on the bed. I kicked off my shoes, closed the door, and curled up next to her to sleep, both of us still dressed. The smell of bacon and eggs woke me around 7, so I slipped out of bed and found my father in the kitchen. "Coming to the mission with me, Joe?" he asked. "Of course," I said, then went to the car for the luggage and got cleaned and dressed before feeding Thanksgiving lunch to the poor and homeless of Knoxville, Tennessee. In the car, Dad turned the key in the ignition, slipped the gear shift into reverse, and backed out without looking to see what might be coming. "Your mother didn't want us to go today," he said. "I know," I replied, because she never did, and the holidays were even worse. He put the car in drive and eased down Kern Street past the church to the stop sign. He turned left down Magnolia, never getting faster than 35 miles per hour. At the shelter, the smell of turkey and dressing was mixed with stale smoke, alcohol, and body odor. I stood next to Dad and mimicked his actions, smiling and spooning mashed potatoes onto each plate next to the dressing he had served a moment before. He chatted, and so did I. He patted backs, squeezed shoulders, and hugged necks. So I did too. When we returned to the house, smelling like those we had fed, my mother was furious. Dad and I were sent to clean up before we were allowed to enter the dining room for Thanksgiving dinner. Finally, we sat down at the oval table, Haley and I on one side, my mother on the other, Dad and Papa at the ends. "Our Father in heaven," Dad prayed, "we thank you for the blessing of food and shelter and for the opportunity to share it as a family and as the family of God. In Jesus' name, amen." He was eating his first bite when the phone rang. "Don't answer that," my mother said, but the receiver was already in his hand. "Hello," he said. Then in response, "This is he." He stood up and walked around the corner into the living room, the phone cord stretching behind him. My mother put down her utensils and stood up from the table. "This is what you have to look forward to, Haley. We haven't had an uninterrupted meal in 25 years, she said, tilting her head toward the base of the phone on the wall. I liked him better when he was just a drunk. When Dad came back around the corner to hang up the phone, he had his jacket under one arm and his Bible under the other. "Don't go," Mom said. "You know I have to," he said in a tone that meant there would be no discussion. "Coming, Joe?" I looked at Haley and squeezed her hand as she nodded. I kissed her on the cheek and followed Dad out the door. We came back from praying with a church member whose wife and child had died that morning in labor. My mother was gone. "She packed her suitcase and left," Haley said. "I tried to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't even tell me where she was going." My parents divorced 6 months later, and my dad, the pastor, became my father, the alcoholic. the manic depressive, the schizophrenic, the mental illness of the moment. We are checking out of the hospital, so I roll my father's wheelchair into the elevator. I push the G button, and it is ringed with an orange glow. The cycles hum as we descend, then quiet into silence. Ding. The doors open before us, and I roll the wheelchair into the lobby. An orderly greets us politely as we approach the exit, then follows us through the parking lot to my car. He helps my father into the passenger seat, closes the door with a gentle click, then begins to push the wheelchair to the building. I open the driver's side door, sit down, close it, and fasten my seatbelt. I turn the key in the ignition. Current flows from the battery to the starter, and the motor turns over. Oxygen mixes with gasoline, and the engine rumbles. "I'm so sorry, son," he says. I nod. "I'll never touch that stuff again," he says, his jaundiced, bloodshot eyes firm with conviction. "Do you believe me?" I say, "Of course," but I am lying, and I know he is aware of it. I believe he wants it to be true, and that just this moment he might think it is. I also believe in his nature. I believe in alcoholism, schizophrenia, and Alzheimer's. I believe in entropy. I put the car in reverse. I don't believe in evolution or that people ever change. I don't believe things will ever be any different, be any better, be anything at all. I believe in every day. I get up in the morning, shave, shower, and dress. I tie my shoes. I put one foot in front of the other. I put the car in drive.